What if your closet knocked back? What if a reflection blinked wrong? Just once. When Sarah moves into a quiet apartment, she's warned not to open the hallway closet. Simple advice until the knocking starts. Late at night, always at 3:12 a.m. What she finds behind that door isn't just another room, it's another version of herself. With every knock, she slips deeper into a chilling dimension of mirrors, doubles, and impossible choices. Curiosity has a price. And Sarah's. About to learn the hard way, not every version of yourself should be let out. Some doors open themselves, especially when you listen too long. Welcome to a story that begins with a knock and ends with something far more terrifying. In the closet that knocks back, we meet Sarah, a young woman starting over in a quiet apartment. On the edge of town, she's told one simple thing by her landlord. Don't try to open the hallway closet. But when soft, deliberate knocks echo from behind that very door in the dead of night, Sarah's curiosity begins to outweigh her fear. And once she listens, the closet begins to listen back. What follows is a spiral into the unknown. The knocks turn to whispers. The mirror no longer reflects correctly. Time bends, memories blur, and a second version of Sarah begins to take shape. As the closet opens, literally and metaphorically, it reveals a twisted passageway into a mirror world that watches, mimics, and waits for a chance to escape. This isn't just a haunting. It's a slow, psychological unraveling. A descent into a realm that wears your face, but not your soul. And once a deal is offered, Sarah must decide. Does she run, or does she become part of the darkness forever? If you're into stories that mess with your mind, blur reality, and leave you with goosebumps long after it ends, you're in the right place. This isn't just another ghost story. It's a slow-burning nightmare that asks, what happens when your curiosity opens a door that was never meant to be touched? The key turned in the lock with a slow, rusty click. Sarah paused for a second, her hand still on the doorknob, as if some part of her was waiting. For what? She wasn't sure. Maybe the moment to feel real. Maybe to feel like her life was finally starting over. She pushed the door open, and the smell of aged wood, faint dust, and something else she couldn't quite place washed over her. It wasn't unpleasant, just old, like the air had been sitting there too long, waiting for someone to stir it up again. The apartment was small, just as the listing had said, but the way the sunlight poured through the tall front windows made it feel a little bigger than it was. The walls were painted a pale, almost antique white, and the hardwood floors creaked gently beneath her boots. To her left was a modest kitchen with old but clean appliances. To the right, a narrow hallway leading to a small bedroom and a single bathroom. And halfway down that hallway, just before the bedroom, the closet. It was the only door that didn't quite match the others. While the rest were smooth and painted a fresh white, the closet door was older, slightly darker like it had been, left out of the renovations. Its brass knob was dull with tarnish, and a faint scratch mark curved just beneath it, as though someone had once tried to pry it open with something sharp. Sarah gave it a passing glance as she dragged in her last box, setting it near the couch. She was too tired to care. Moving had taken all day, and her arms ached with the kind of deep soreness that only came from trying to lift furniture without help. Her ex would have never helped anyway, she thought, and pushed the thought out of her mind like a moth shooed from a window. The landlord had been strange, polite but distant. He didn't give her a tour, just handed her the keys, scribbled his number on a crumpled receipt, and offered one final unsettling comment. Everything works fine, but don't bother with the hallway closet. It's sealed up tight. Just leave it be. She'd nodded, too distracted by her own thoughts to question him then. Now, standing alone in the dim evening light, she remembered his words with sudden clarity. Sealed tight? Who seals a closet? She walked over and tested the knob. It didn't turn. She pressed her ear to the wood, more out of curiosity than concern. Nothing. No air whooshing. No mechanical sounds. Just silence. Still, something about the door made her uneasy, like the way you feel when you sense someone staring at you from across the room. But you're alone. She pulled back and turned away quickly, not liking how her skin had started to prickle. Instead, she tried to settle in. She lit a candle on the coffee table, unpacked a few books, and found her favorite hoodie in one of the boxes. The sun dipped lower, and the shadows in the apartment stretched longer and deeper. Her phone buzzed once. Her best friend checking in, but she didn't answer. She just wanted one night of peace. By 11:30, she had changed into pajamas, poured herself a glass of wine, and was half asleep on the couch. The apartment was completely still, until it wasn't. Knock. 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 She sat up straight, heart leaping into her throat. It came again. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, spaced out, deliberate. The sound echoed slightly, like it came from inside something. Hollow, like a small, dark space. Sarah's eyes darted toward the hallway. The closet door was still shut. She stood, wine glass trembling in her hand. "Hello?" she called softly, then immediately felt foolish. No answer, just silence. But the moment stretched longer than it should have, like time was holding its breath. She inched toward the hallway and stopped halfway, peering down at the closet. The air felt heavier here. She waited, breath shallow. Nothing. No. More knocks. Maybe the building was settling. Maybe it was plumbing, or a neighbor slamming something next door. Except the apartment was one of only 3 in the building. The top floor was empty. The basement had been locked. The unit next to hers was still under renovation according to the landlord. So who, or what, had knocked? She backed away slowly, returned to the couch, and left every single light on. As she pulled a blanket around her shoulders, she promised herself one thing. She wasn't going to open that door. Not tonight, and maybe not ever. The morning after the knocking, sunlight spilled lazily across Sarah's floor, warm and golden. For a few blissful moments, she forgot all about the night before. Birds chirped faintly outside the window, and the apartment was quiet. The kind of quiet that usually felt peaceful. But not today. Today, the silence felt like it was watching her. Sarah stretched, rubbed her eyes, and glanced toward the hallway. The closet door remained closed. Still, something was different. She couldn't quite explain it, but the air in the apartment felt heavier, like the atmosphere had thickened overnight. There was a faint chill clinging to the hallway that hadn't been there the day before, a dampness in the air that had no reason to be. Brushing it off, she made her way to the kitchen. The smell of coffee grounds and toast filled the space as she tried to settle into her normal routine. She even played some music, something light and familiar, hoping to fill the strange quiet. But underneath the rhythm of the song, she kept hearing something else. Not voices exactly. More like a soft, rhythmic sound she couldn't quite place. Like breathing. Or whispering. She turned the music off. Silence again. Nothing. She shook her head. Maybe the move had gotten to her. It was probably just nerves. First nights in a new place could play tricks on your mind. She pulled her hoodie tighter and opened the window to let in some fresh air, but the breeze that came through was bitterly cold. Too cold for early autumn. She leaned out to check the weather. That's when she noticed it. All the windows in the building across the street had been covered. Newspaper, cardboard, curtains nailed down from the inside. Every single one. She frowned. Had that always been like that? She'd walked this neighborhood a dozen times before moving in. She was sure those apartments had been lived in. Kids' toys on balconies, lights on at night. Now, not a soul. And something else. The street, usually filled with the occasional jogger or dog walker, was dead quiet. Too quiet. She shut the window quickly. The knocking didn't return that day. Not in the morning, not in the afternoon. Not when the sun dipped low and shadows crept across the walls. But Sarah couldn't relax. She kept looking over her shoulder. She found herself pausing in doorways, listening without knowing what she was listening for. The hallway closet became an unspoken presence. She didn't even need to see it. She just felt it. Like it had become part of the apartment's heartbeat. Like it knew she was thinking about it. She avoided walking past it directly. Always took a wider arc around, pretending she just needed to grab something else first. Her hand itched to try the knob again, just to be sure it was really stuck. That night she placed a dining chair in front of it, not to block it, just to know if it moved. At 3:12 a.m., she woke with a jolt. Her eyes shot to the clock. Knock, knock, knock. She sat upright in bed, heart thudding like a drum in her chest. 3 slow knocks, exactly like the night before. She listened harder. No footsteps, no voices, just the echo of those knocks bouncing around her mind like a warning bell. She slipped out of bed and padded softly to the hallway, stopping just where the bedroom carpet met the wooden floorboards. The chair was still there, the closet door unmoved. She stood there, frozen in the dark, and then she heard it. Not knocking, not scratching. Breathing, a slow, raspy inhale. Then a pause, then another, coming from inside the closet. Her skin broke into goosebumps so fast it hurt. She reached for her phone, hands trembling. She turned on the flashlight and pointed it toward the closet. Nothing. No movement. No sound. The breathing had stopped. She took one slow step back, then another. Then sprinted for the bedroom and slammed the door shut. Morning came, but it brought no peace. The sky outside was gray and low, as if the clouds themselves were pressing down on the building. Her phone buzzed, texts from friends, a reminder about a work meeting, a discount email from the grocery store. But she ignored them all. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the living room rug, staring down the hallway. She knew 2 things now. 1, the knocking wasn't a one-time thing. 2, whatever was inside that closet was aware of her. And it wasn't just noise anymore. It was breathing. Watching, waiting. Sarah didn't sleep much after that second night. She tried, but every time her eyes closed, she imagined the closet door slowly creaking open in the dark. The thought of something, someone, watching her through that thin slab of wood made her stomach turn. By the 3rd morning, the apartment felt less like a home and more like a trap. She paced the living room with her phone clutched in one hand. She'd already Googled things like closet knocking by itself, apartment haunted signs, and how to bless a doorway. But the internet was mostly useless. Forums full of wild theories, ghost stories, smirking skeptics. She needed facts, something concrete. So she went to the one place in town where old truths were sometimes buried deep enough to be forgotten, until someone came digging. The Maple Hollow Town Library was quiet. Too quiet, in fact. Sarah half expected to hear the same knocking echo down the aisles of dusty books. The building was older than most in town, with high-arched windows and thick wooden beams across the ceiling. It smelled like ink, yellowing paper, and floor polish. A few students whispered over laptops in the corner. The rest of the place was deserted. At the front desk, a woman with kind eyes and silver curls smiled at her. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for records," Sarah said. "Old ones. I just moved into an apartment on Maynard Street, number 12. I was hoping to learn a little about the building." The woman's smile faded just slightly, like she'd heard that address before. "Oh," she said, her voice softening. "Maynard. That place has some history." Sarah leaned forward. "I was afraid of that." In the back of the library, behind a door marked Archives, were rows of filing cabinets, microfilm reels, and shelves of leather-bound town registries. The librarian gave Sarah a pair of white gloves and left her alone with a small lamp and a dust-covered logbook. From the 1950s, the building had changed hands many times. It was originally built in 1911 as a private residence, a large family estate that had since been carved up into rental units. Sarah flipped through handwritten census notes, property records, and even old newspaper clippings. Most were uneventful. Until 1963. That year, a headline caught her eye. "Local woman vanishes without a trace." Her breath caught. She leaned in closer. Emily Hawthorne, 27, was reported missing late Tuesday night from her home on Maynard Street. Her husband, Charles Hawthorne, told police she had retired early and was not in the house the next morning. Her personal belongings were untouched. The only sign of disturbance was a broken door hinge in the upstairs hallway closet. There was a black and white photo of Emily. She had kind eyes, long dark hair, and a slightly crooked smile. A date scribbled in red pen underneath the article, March 12, 1963. Sarah's eyes widened. That was the same date she'd heard the knocking. March 12th, exactly 62 years later. She flipped forward. The case was never solved. No body, no trace, just theories. One article mentioned rumors among neighbors, strange sounds in the walls, cold spots. One woman claimed she heard a voice calling her name from inside her closet. Another said the house had a presence, something that didn't want to be disturbed. Sarah sat back in her chair, heart pounding. It wasn't just her. It never had been. She took a photo of the article with her phone and scrawled down notes from the files. But it wasn't until she started to leave that she noticed something even stranger. On a shelf near the door, a forgotten leather-bound ledger had been left open. Not by her. She peeked over the edge and found a floor plan of the original house. Before, it had been turned into apartments. Her eyes traced the layout. Living room. Kitchen. Upstairs hallway. And there it was. The closet. Only in the old blueprint it wasn't labeled closet. It was marked as Servants' Passage, sealed 1935. Passage? To where? Back at the apartment, she couldn't stop looking at the photo of Emily's face. There was something about it that felt familiar. Not her features exactly, but her eyes. They looked tired, haunted, trapped. Sarah glanced down the hallway. The closet door hadn't moved, but the chair she'd left in front of it had slid a few inches to the side. She hadn't touched it. She knew she hadn't. But more than that, she felt watched again. She stood in the hallway, hand clenched at her side, staring at the door as a slow chill crept down her spine. If there was a passage behind that closet, maybe Emily was still there. Or maybe something else was, waiting for someone curious enough to find it. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor with her back against the bedroom wall. Blanket. Around her shoulders, Emily's face still glowing on her phone screen. That haunting, frozen smile stared back at her like a warning. Soft and sad, like a woman who had seen too much, too late. She could still hear it. The knocks, not just echoes in her memory, but imprinted in her bones. Knock, knock, knock. They came even in silence now, as if the apartment had absorbed the sound into its very walls. And that chair in front of the closet, she'd shoved it back into place the moment she got home, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the door had opened at some point while she was gone. Just a crack, just enough to breathe, just enough to watch. At 4:30 a.m., Sarah picked up her phone and called the landlord. It rang 6 times. She was about to hang up when a tired, gravelly voice finally answered. "Hello? Mr. Lorne?" Her voice cracked with nerves. "This is Sarah. Apartment 12. Silence. Then a long sigh. "I was wondering when you'd call." Her breath caught. "So you knew." "I always know," he muttered. "People always call after the second night." There was a pause between them, heavy and grim. "What is it?" she asked. "What's behind the closet?" "I don't know anymore," he said quietly. "I used to think I did. Years ago, I thought maybe it was just a trick of the building. A bad spot, energy, a stain left behind by something terrible. But now what? I think it's alive, or trying to be." Sarah stared at the closet from across the room. She could almost feel it pulsing, like a heartbeat behind the wood. "Why didn't you tell me this before I moved in?" she whispered. "I hoped you wouldn't stay long enough for it to notice you." His voice was brittle. It doesn't always wake up, but when it does, it latches on. "Latches on?" Her voice rose. "To what?" "To curiosity, to attention, to fear. It feeds on those things. You feed it, and it grows bolder, stronger." Sarah clenched her jaw. "I didn't feed it anything. It came to me." "You listened," he said. "You knocked back, didn't you?" Her blood ran cold. "I never touched it. But you heard it. And you didn't leave." Another long pause. "Why is it there?" she asked. "What does it want?" "I don't know," he said again, barely above a whisper. "I only know what happened to the others, the ones who stayed." Sarah swallowed. "What happened to them?" Another silence. But this time it felt like he was searching for a way to soften the truth. "They disappear," he said finally. "Not all at once. Not physically at first, but their minds go. Their sense of time. Their reflection starts acting wrong. They begin hearing things, seeing things that aren't there, and missing things that are." "That sounds like a haunting," Sarah said, but the word felt too weak, too cliché. "No," the landlord replied sharply. "Ghosts linger. They used to be alive. This thing was never human. It just wears pieces of us, bits of memory, faces we trust. It's like a mimic, a shadow learning how to pretend." Sarah felt her knees go weak. "And if I leave?" He hesitated. "It might follow. But not if you leave now. Not if you don't open the door. Don't acknowledge it again. Don't speak to it. Don't even think about it if you can help it." She looked down the hallway. The light bulb just outside the closet flickered once, then buzzed softly like something breathing through the wires. "But I already heard it," she whispered. "It already knows I'm here." "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have never rented to you. I was selfish. I thought maybe it was done with me." "You lived here?" she asked, voice tightening. "I was in that unit 30 years ago. I left after the third knock, but by then, I'd already seen it once. In the mirror. Sarah didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until her lungs screamed for air. Her heart thundered in her chest. The mirror. Her eyes turned slowly toward the hallway bathroom, just past the closet door. Inside was a small vanity mirror. Nothing special. She'd looked into it dozens of times since moving in, but tonight, had it felt different? Before she could ask, the line went dead. A soft click, then silence. She stared at her screen. Call ended. She tried redialing. Voicemail. For the next hour, she sat on the edge of the bed, gripping her phone like a weapon, flinching at every creak and hum of the old apartment. The closet door never opened, but it didn't have to. The presence behind it was awake now, restless, a weight pressing against the other side, testing the limits. A dog scratching to be let in. At 5:22 a.m., she walked to the bathroom. Slowly, carefully, she stepped in front of the mirror. Her face looked pale, drawn tight with stress and fatigue. But then her reflection blinked. She didn't. Sarah stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat. She stared. The reflection was still. Exactly like her. But wrong. Its smile was just a little too wide, its eyes a shade too dark, its head tilted just slightly to the left, mimicking, learning, waiting. And behind her reflection, the closet door was open. By sunrise, the mirror was back to normal, or at least it looked that way. Sarah stood in the bathroom doorway, arms crossed tightly over her chest, watching her reflection mimic every movement with perfect timing. But trust was broken. That strange blink, the delay, the tilt, the grin, had cracked something in her that couldn't be repaired. She touched the edge of the vanity with her fingertips. Her reflection did too. It seemed right, but so did the knock, until it wasn't. The rest of the day moved in a haze, like Sarah was trapped behind glass. She tried to resume a normal routine, coffee, laundry, scrolling through her phone, but none of it felt real. The apartment pulsed with invisible tension. Every corner felt watched. Every window, too, still. Time lost meaning. She'd glance at the clock and swear only minutes had passed, only to find an hour gone. By evening, the silence felt so thick it pressed against her eardrums. The apartment seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her to do the same thing she swore she never would. Open the closet. She didn't want to. She really didn't, but curiosity is a funny thing. It's never loud. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Soft, steady, enticing. Just look. Just once. You need to know. It was almost like a voice inside her now. Low, smooth, impossible to trace back to her own thoughts. It wasn't fear driving her anymore. It was the sickening, impossible need to understand. If something was in that closet, if something had taken Emily, haunted the landlord, blinked in her mirror, she had to see it. At 2:47 a.m., Sarah stood barefoot in the hallway, staring down the closet door like it might blink first. She'd brought her phone. Flashlight on. Camera rolling. She positioned it on the floor, angled just right to catch everything. Then she stood in front of the closet and wrapped her fingers around the knob. It was icy cold. Her breath fogged in the air, though the heat in the apartment was on. Her hand trembled. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Just a peek." She turned the knob. Click. It unlocked. She hadn't expected it to. Hadn't even tried since the first day. The door creaked open on its own, just an inch. A breath of air slipped out. Not stale like before. This was colder, older. It smelled like stone and rot and something long forgotten. She hesitated. Her phone's flashlight cut a narrow beam into the closet. There wasn't much inside, just an old coat, a few cracked hangers swaying gently, and at the back, nearly hidden in shadow, a small, square wooden panel. A hidden door. The servant's passage. She reached out and touched the panel. It shifted beneath her fingers like it was waiting to be found. With a firm push, the wood gave way, creaking open to reveal a dark hole barely wide enough for a person to crawl through. Sarah's heart was a wild drumbeat now. She could still turn back. She could seal the door, grab her bag, leave the apartment, and never return. But the voice inside her whispered again, "You've come this far. Just a little further. Find out the truth." She turned to the camera on the floor. "If I don't come back out," she whispered, "don't believe what walks out of here instead." Then she dropped to her knees, took one last breath and crawled inside. The crawl space was tighter than she expected. The walls brushed against her shoulders. The floor beneath her was gritty and cold. Stone, not wood. The flashlight beam danced across the surface, revealing cobwebs, broken nails, old dust that stirred with every breath. She crawled forward. The further she went, the quieter the world became. Her own heartbeat began to sound distant, like it was echoing from another room. Her breath sounded too loud, too close, and then, without warning, the space opened up. She found herself standing in a hallway, not the one in her apartment. No, this one was older. The walls were stone, but smooth, like they'd been carved by hand. Dim, yellow light flickered above her from exposed bulbs wired to the ceiling like veins. Mirrors lined the walls, dozens of them. Each mirror showed her, and yet none of them looked quite right. One, Sarah, looked slightly older. One had blood on her hands. One was smiling, a long, slow grin that spread wider and wider until it touched the edges of her face. She turned away from the mirrors, bile rising in her throat. At the far end of the hallway stood a door. She walked toward it, drawn forward by something she didn't understand. The air here tasted metallic, like coins on her tongue. Her fingers closed around the doorknob. The metal felt alive. She opened the door. Inside was her apartment, or something that looked like it. But everything was off. The walls were darker, warped. The windows had no view, only blackness behind the glass. The furniture looked half-melted like wax left too long in the sun. And on the couch sat a woman, her back to Sarah. Long, dark hair. Still, Sarah's throat went dry. "Hello?" The woman stood and turned. It was her, but not her. The eyes were too wide, the skin too pale, and the smile was Emily's. "Thank you," the double said, voice rich with hunger. "Now I can leave." It stepped forward. Sarah turned to duty, run. But the hallway behind her was gone. Just mirrors now, and every reflection smiled. Sarah ran, or tried to. Her legs moved, heart thundering, breath ragged, but the hallway stretched like elastic. The mirrors lined both sides, countless and dizzying, each reflection a grotesque echo of herself. Some smiled, some screamed, some stood still, eyes weeping, black tears. The walls pulsed. The light overhead flickered like a dying heartbeat. The air, thick and suffocating, tasted like ash and copper. Behind her, the other Sarah followed, calm, unhurried, barefoot footsteps soft against the warped floor, that sick, serene smile never fading. "You let me in," the thing said gently. "Now it's your turn." "No," Sarah shouted, clawing at the walls, searching for an exit that didn't exist. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know." "But you wanted to," the voice cooed. "Curiosity is a door, and you opened it wide." Sarah stumbled backward into a mirror. The glass rippled like water, then snapped back, rejecting her. She turned and ran again. This time she burst into a room. Somehow familiar, but wrong in every possible way. It was her bedroom. But not. The layout was identical, but the colors were off. The walls were gray instead of blue. The bed was unmade with sheets she didn't own, faded yellow with rust-colored stains. A strange humming came from the lamp, which flickered even though it wasn't plugged in. The window showed no street, no sky, only blackness, thick, endless, and breathing. The walls, too, seemed to inhale and exhale around her. There were no doors out, just the one she came through. And now it was gone. In the far corner of the room stood a figure. Not Sarah. Not even like Sarah. It was tall, thin, limbs too long, like its body had been stretched in unnatural directions. Its face was wrong, blurred, like someone tried to paint it and smeared the features before they dried. But in place of eyes, two deep hollows stared at her. Not empty. Hungry. It raised one hand and pointed behind her. Sarah turned. A new door had appeared. Wooden. Old. Familiar. It was the closet. Inside her own mind. Or was this still her mind? She stepped closer. The door creaked open as she approached, slow and deliberate, revealing complete darkness within. Not shadows. Not dim light. Pure, absolute black. Something ancient waited in that blackness. And it knew she was there. A whisper slithered through the air, so close it grazed her ear. Emily saw. Emily stayed. Sarah shivered. She looked back at the faceless figure. It nodded, resigned, inviting, complicit. Sarah stepped into the closet. It was like falling into water with no surface, weightless, soundless, timeless, no floor, no gravity. But she wasn't alone. Shapes moved in the dark. Some large, crawling across unseen ceilings. Some small, twitching in the corners of her vision. One brushed against her ankle. Another whispered her name from inches away. But when she turned, nothing was there. Then, a face, hovering just ahead of her, glowing faintly in the dark. A woman. Eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Emily. Her face flickered like static, flashing between hope and horror. She reached out. Sarah moved closer, tears burning her eyes. "Emily?" she whispered. Emily nodded once and then began to sink. Downward into the void, like the closet was swallowing her all over again. Sarah reached out, but a force yanked her backward, hard. Suddenly, she was falling. She hit the floor of her real apartment with a thud that knocked the wind from her lungs. Lights on, air still, her phone buzzing faintly nearby. Everything looked normal. The closet door stood open, but no passage remained. No second panel, just a coat hanging neatly on a single hanger. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet. Sarah picked up her phone with trembling fingers. The camera had stopped recording. She played. The last few seconds of the video, nothing but static. Then, right before the clip ended, a single frame flashed on screen. Her own face. But older. Eyes sunken. Smile too wide. staring right into the lens. She dropped the phone. Something in the apartment had changed. The air was still heavy. Her ears still rang faintly. The silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like waiting for her to forget, lower her guard. To sleep, and across the hall, inside the mirror above the bathroom sink, her reflection blinked, just a fraction too late. The days that followed blurred together like smeared paint. Sarah stopped checking the time. Clocks ticked too fast or too slow. Her phone froze at 3:12 a.m. every night, no matter how many times. She restarted it. Meals went cold without her realizing. Lights flickered even when switched off, and shadows in the corners of rooms seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. She stopped going outside. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was the sensation. Heavy, invisible hands pressing her down whenever she stood near the front door, as if the apartment wanted her to stay. As if whatever lived in that hidden closet, passage had followed her back, and maybe brought something else with it. One evening, Sarah stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring into her own eyes for so long her reflection no longer looked like her. Same face, same body, but a different presence. There was a delay now, barely noticeable, but there. When she tilted her head, the reflection followed a split second too late. When she smiled, it hesitated before mimicking her expression. It was copying her, but it was still learning how. Then, on the 7th night, something changed. She woke up with her blanket perfectly folded at the foot of her bed, something she never did. Her slippers placed neatly beside the mattress, her bedroom door wide open. She hadn't gone to sleep that way. She was sure of it. A note had been slipped under her door. No handwriting, just 4 typed words on a yellowing scrap of paper. Come meet yourself tonight. At first, she refused. Crumpled the paper, tried to burn it, but it wouldn't catch fire. It just sat there, unburned in the flickering flame of her lighter, like the paper itself didn't belong to this world. By midnight, she was pacing the hallway, heart pounding in a rhythm she couldn't slow. Her body trembled with anticipation and fear. Her feet carried her, without thinking, toward the closet. Still sealed, still ordinary, still waiting. She turned away, but caught a glimpse of something strange. The mirror. It had fogged over, but she hadn't used the shower, and there in the fog was a handprint on the inside. Her knees weakened, the handprint slowly faded. Then, a knock, but not from the closet. It came from the mirror. 3 sharp taps. Knock, knock, knock. Sarah stood frozen as the glass began to ripple, like water disturbed by wind. Her own reflection shimmered and distorted, then slowly stepped back, revealing another version of herself standing behind the mirror. The other, Sarah, looked exactly like her, but the eyes were wrong. They were deeper, darker, wiser, like she had seen things Sarah hadn't yet, and wouldn't want to. The mirror slowly, impossibly, began to open, like a doorway. A hush of wind slipped into the room, bringing with it the scent of damp earth and ash. Sarah took a step forward, then another, and stepped through the mirror. The world on the other side was not upside down. It was tilted. Reality felt off-center, like a painting hung just slightly crooked. But no matter how you adjusted it, it never felt right. The apartment was the same, yet drenched in shadows. Lights hummed at odd frequencies. Colors were dimmed and distorted. The couch was covered in dust. The windows looked out into swirling gray mist. She heard footsteps behind her. She turned and came face to face with herself. This time, The other Sarah didn't smile. She looked tired, bruised somehow, though there were no marks on her skin. She spoke in a voice that sounded like Sarah's, but older, like it had been worn down by time. "You weren't supposed to open it," the other Sarah said. "I had to know," Sarah whispered. "No," the double replied. "You wanted to know. That's the difference." Sarah's mouth went dry. "What is this place?" The double looked around, her expression almost mournful. "It's what's left of people who go too far," she said. "Curiosity makes the door. Fear opens it. But staying, that's what builds the rest." Sarah shook her head, backing away. "No, I came through. I can go back." The other Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Can you?" She turned and pointed at the mirror. It was no longer a door, it was just glass now. Cold, unbroken glass. Sarah rushed forward, slamming her hands against it. Her apartment was still there, clear as day. But now, it was the mirror. She was on the wrong side. The reflection that remained, it looked exactly like her. It smiled, then walked away. "No," Sarah whispered. "No, no, no." The other Sarah sat calmly on the bed. "I tried too," she said. "I begged, I screamed. But once the mirror closes, that's it." "What is this place?" "A prison," her double said. "A memory, a reflection. I've been here years, or maybe only minutes. Time doesn't work here." Sarah's hands trembled as she pressed her forehead to the cold glass. The mirror's surface showed her living room. The phone she'd dropped, the candle still burning. Her own hands, now someone else's. "Is there a way out?" she asked. "There's always a way out," the other Sarah said. "But the question is, who gets to take it?" Behind them, a new door creaked open, deep red, heavy, and humming. Sarah turned toward it. The other side wasn't finished with her yet. The red door pulsed, not like something mechanical, but alive, as if it had a heartbeat of its own, slow and steady, echoing through the floor beneath Sarah's feet. It cast a dull crimson glow across the shadow-warped version of her bedroom, painting everything in blood and silence. Sarah stood still, her breath shallow, her hands trembling at her sides. Behind her, the other Sarah remained seated on the bed, arms folded, face unreadable. "You can feel it, can't you?" the double said softly. "It's waiting for you." Sarah didn't answer, because she could. The air was thick around the door, humming with pressure, with promise. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff during a storm. Dangerous, magnetic, almost irresistible. "What's behind it?" she asked. The other Sarah tilted her head slightly. "The answer, or the end. Sometimes both." Sarah turned, eyes narrowed. "You said there was a way out. Is that it?" The double smiled faintly. "I said there's always a way out. I never said it wouldn't cost you." Sarah stepped toward the red door, the floor creaking beneath her feet like old bones shifting. Her fingers brushed the handle. It was warm, almost fever-hot. She hesitated. "Tell me what happens if I open it." The double stood, walking slowly until she was just behind Sarah, speaking so close to her ear she could feel the breath. "If you go through, you'll meet it. The thing behind the knocking. The voice in the mirror. The shadow that pretends to be you." Sarah swallowed hard. And it will offer you a deal." "What kind of deal?" "The kind you only get once." Sarah turned the handle. The door swung open with a deep groan, revealing only blackness. But it wasn't empty. It was dense with something more than dark, something that listened, that waited. She stepped through. The space beyond was a void, but not silent. It breathed. It murmured. Voices drifted from unseen corners, layered atop one another in a tapestry of whispers, fragments of thoughts, regrets, memories. Some she recognized as her own. Others weren't. And then, something moved. From the dark, a figure emerged. Not a monster. Not a demon. A woman, identical to her, but older. Worn, weary, dressed in the same clothes Sarah had worn the day she moved in. Her skin was pale, her eyes sunken, but her presence filled the space like smoke, like static in the air before lightning strikes. "I've been watching you," the woman said. Her voice was low, melodic, ancient. Sarah stared at her double. "You're not me. I'm what's left after curiosity, after fear, after the deal was made." "What deal?" The woman smiled gently. "I was offered a choice. One of us gets to leave. The other stays. That's the balance, the rule." Sarah's heart dropped. "A trade. Yes. You stepped into the mirror. You crossed the line. Now the door needs to close behind someone. That's how it stays sealed." Sarah took a step back. "There has to be another way." "There always is," the woman said. "You can. Stay here. Let the other you walk free. The one who's already smiling into your mirror, wearing your face, living your life." "No." Or, the woman reached out her hand. "You can take my place. Walk out of here. Pretend nothing ever happened." Sarah didn't move. "But I'll have to do this to someone else. Someday." The woman nodded. "That's the deal." Silence fell between them. The kind of silence that tests who you are when no one else is watching. Sarah's eyes welled with tears. Not out of fear, but fury. Not because of what was being asked of her, but because part of her wanted to say yes, to escape, to forget. She could walk back into her life, eat breakfast, go to work, laugh again. Even if the mirror watched her, even if the darkness never truly left. Wasn't that better than being lost forever on the other side? Her breath shook. "I want to go home," she whispered. The woman smiled and stepped aside. The path behind her changed, no longer void, but a hallway bathed in faint yellow light. At the end was a door. Plain, wooden, familiar. The front door of her apartment. Sarah stepped forward, but before she crossed the threshold she looked back. The woman was gone. Only the blackness remained, waiting for the next knock. She woke up on the floor of her living room. Morning light bled through the window. The closet was closed, the mirror still, the apartment, hers. But everything felt quieter now, heavier. Like the silence was watching her, and in the reflection of her phone screen, just for a moment, her eyes were too dark, her smile just a little, too wide. The light through the window was wrong, too bright, too still, like it wasn't sunlight at all, but a memory of it, projected onto the walls like a photograph left too long in the sun. Sarah sat up slowly on the living room floor, her limbs heavy, her mind thick with fog. The apartment was quiet. Still, peaceful almost. Except, it wasn't. The silence wasn't empty. It was alert. It pressed against her ears like static just beneath the surface, waiting for her to stop moving, to stop thinking, to forget. She pulled herself to her feet and looked around. Everything was in place. The chair by the table, the blanket on the couch, the faint scent of coffee in the air. She could almost believe she had dreamed the whole thing. Almost. In the hallway, the closet door was shut, sealed, like nothing had ever happened. like no mirror had ever opened, no double had ever smiled. She reached out, hesitated, then gently tested the knob. Locked. Her hand lingered for a second too long before she jerked it back, heart fluttering in her chest. Don't try to open the closet in the hallway. It's stuck shut. The landlord's words echoed like a ghost from another life. She wondered where he was now, if he still existed at all. Sarah moved through her morning routine like an actress reciting lines from a play she barely remembered. Brush teeth, wash face, make coffee. Toast burned slightly, but she didn't care. The warmth of the mug in her hands felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. She sat at the kitchen table and stared at her phone. It was exactly 3:12 a.m. Despite the bright morning sun outside, the numbers didn't move. She powered it off. Powered it on. 12. It was always 3:12 now. That night, she lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, no knocking, no whispers, just silence. She thought she should feel relieved, but relief never came. Instead, she felt hollow, like something had been taken from her, or maybe left behind inside her. The mirror above the bathroom sink was covered with a towel now. She couldn't bear to look. Not yet. Not when she still didn't trust what might be looking back. The next day, Sarah walked outside for the first time in over a week. The neighborhood was as it always had been. Quiet streets, trimmed hedges, distant barking from someone's backyard. But something was off in the faces she passed. A neighbor waved at her, but their smile didn't reach. Their eyes. A dog barked once, then abruptly stopped mid-growl like someone had hit a mute button. Children laughed down the street, but when she looked, there was no one there. She walked faster. By the time she returned home, her palms were damp with sweat, and her keys slipped in her shaking fingers. She didn't feel safer inside, but she knew the rules, at least in here. She knew the shape of the wrongness. That evening, she opened her laptop to write down everything. She typed for hours. Details, names, feelings, descriptions of the woman in the mirror, the red door, the deal. But when she saved the file, the screen blinked once. Then the file name changed. Entry number 2. Accepted. She hadn't named it that. She tried to delete it. It wouldn't delete. She tried to open it again. It was empty. A blank document, except for one sentence at the top. Welcome home, Sarah. She slammed the laptop shut. Later, as she passed the hallway, she paused, just for a second. The closet door was still closed, still sealed. But this time, there were footprints leading up to it. Bare. Wet. Like someone had stepped out of a shower and walked straight to the door, before vanishing into it. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. The hallway light flickered, once, then again, and then held steady. Behind her, the bathroom door creaked open ever so slightly. Just enough for the towel to slip off the mirror. She turned. Her reflection stared back. It didn't smile. It didn't blink. It didn't move. Sarah stood frozen. And the reflection smiled. There was something deeply wrong with the way the reflection smiled. It wasn't just delayed. It was intentional. A smile crafted, not felt. A performance. A mask. Sarah stared at it, her throat tight, a cold sweat sliding down. Her spine. Her own face in the mirror, copied back with subtle distortions. The kind of differences that only made sense the longer you stared. The eyes were glassy, the lips too precise, and the expression held none of the fear burning inside her now. She turned away, refusing to meet its gaze any longer. But the damage. had already been done. She had seen it, and it had seen her. That night, Sarah sat in the corner of her bedroom, legs pulled to her chest, blanket over her shoulders like armor. The lights were all on, every bulb in the apartment blazing to keep the shadows at bay. But still, darkness crept in. Under the doors, into her thoughts. She didn't sleep. She listened. She waited. She knew it was coming, because the rules were always the same. There were 3 knocks, and there was always a last one. At 3:12 a.m., her phone lit up, though it was still powered off, just a soft glow on the screen. A new notification. It's time. Then, knock. Once louder than before. Solid. Final. From the hallway closet. Sarah didn't move. Knock. Twice. Her heart pounded so violently it hurt. She felt it in her throat, behind her eyes, in every fingertip. She stood up slowly, legs numb with terror. Knock. The 3rd time was different. The sound wasn't coming from the door this time. It was coming from inside the room. She turned, just as the light above her flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed her, a sound behind her. She spun. The closet was open, not wide, but just enough. Enough to see the shadows moving inside, enough to hear the breathing. She backed away, blindly reaching, for the phone, for the door, for anything. But the apartment had changed. The walls had stretched. The windows vanished. The door was gone. She wasn't home anymore. She was in the in-between, that place behind mirrors and closets and cracked reflections, the space between identities, between thoughts. And she wasn't alone. From the darkness stepped a figure. Not the smiling version. Not the copy. This one was formless, shifting. A ripple of faces and limbs and whispers. A collage of everyone at ECRD had ever taken. Echoes of Emily, of the landlord, of Sarah herself, flickering in and out like memories left too long in the dark. It spoke, not in words, but in feelings, in images. A deal once offered, a path once chosen, a door opened, and now a price to be paid. "I didn't know," Sarah whispered. "I didn't understand." The creature shifted, paused, and then, somehow, listened. There was something ancient in its silence, something that had waited too long to be heard. And then, to her shock, it stepped aside. A path opened behind it. A new door. Wooden. Simple. Familiar. Her apartment, again. But real. Unbroken, the light of morning leaking through the crack at the bottom. "Another chance?" she asked. The figure didn't answer, but the meaning was clear. She could go. But something else had to stay. Sarah took one step forward and the reflection followed her. They met in the hallway at the edge of the door. One would leave. One would remain. She stared into her own eyes, both women silent, both versions knowing exactly what the other wanted. And then, without a word, Sarah stepped through. The real world greeted her with the scent of coffee and the low hum of morning traffic. Normal, familiar, too perfect. She turned, looked back. The door had vanished. The closet was shut. Forever, this time. Or so it seemed. A week later, the landlord returned to clear out the apartment. He walked through the rooms with tired eyes, noting the untouched boxes, the stale air, the way the mirror above the bathroom had been covered again. He sighed. "She stayed too long," he muttered, then paused, because, as he turned toward the hallway, he saw something strange, a figure standing at the far end. Still, watching. Her face familiar. Too familiar. She smiled at him. Not kindly. Not human. Just practicing. If this story kept you hooked, hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling tales just like this. Share this video with a friend who loves twisted horror and drop a comment. What would you do if your reflection smiled first? Don't forget to turn on notifications, because the next story might knock when you least expect it.